Well, hello and welcome back to the Young Entrepreneur's Journey podcast with your host, Yasmina Ellens. And today I have the absolute pleasure of speaking with Sofia Skevofylaka, all the way from Greece. And she is a very impressive woman, just soon graduating from Imperial and a master's in innovation, entrepreneurship and management, has been the president and leader in God knows how many societies, including the best student union in Scotland worth £6 million. And you run a startup as well, which is pretty cool. Let me know if I missed anything out. I'm sure I missed a lot of things. But so my first question that I really want to ask you is, what originally got you onto your entrepreneurial journey?
Perfect. First of all, thank you so much for having me, and for all trying to do all the things with the titles. What actually got me into entrepreneurship, I think it's something I had ever since I was very young. And when I mean young is like even elementary school and high school. I always knew I wanted to give back to community, but I wanted to do it my own way, in a sense that I know I can do things and I know I can give back. I can actually make things happen, but I kind of wanted to be my own boss as well, in a sense. So it started with the whole trip of trying to understand where I'm going to go in life. And when I went to Scotland, I just literally grabbed every opportunity that came across me, to even understand where what direction I want to help, the way I saw it, at least. And one of the positions I even did when I was in Dundee in Scotland, I was the president of the Centre for Entrepreneurship. So we were helping startups to even actually start their own journey. And this is the first time I realized you can actually start your own business, no matter the age you are, no matter which way you want to go. So it started from a very young age, and both my parents are into business. But I always knew I wanted to build something on my own, to be able to leave my own legacy to the world, and at the same time being able to help and inspire others as well. So it started very young, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And so right now what are you doing right now? So you have a startup. I feel like you've got your foot in, you seem like one of these women who's like, I do everything and I do it all good as well.
So I have a principle, and it can sound a bit cliche, but it's like, if it ain't fun, don't do it. So I always try to do things that correspond with who I am and the identity of, who I want to be one day. So currently, I'm finishing my master's at Imperial, as you mentioned, innovation, entrepreneurship and management, which is great. I was also elected as the chair. So, helping with the class and having my own committee to be able to help the class. I was lucky enough to be chosen also to be the chair of the Dean's Advisory Council at Imperial. So I'm helping other chairs and all the masters in the business school to be able to have the best student experience we can have. And at the same time, I'm running a startup with my mom. It's about HR training and consulting here in Greece. And currently I'm working on an expansion around technologies, which is going to be completely my own next big step. So I'm currently working on a deal as well. Mm-hmm.
That's super interesting. Yeah, that's super interesting. What I'm really curious to know is, obviously you're doing a lot of things, and I really want to know, so you want to be that person that inspires people. You want to live by your own rules. You don't want to live by someone else's rules. And you've taken up, you're chair of this, chair of that, president of this, president of that. I think it's quite rare for women, especially, to go and put themselves out there and to really play big and be like, yeah, I want to be the leader of this and I want to be the leader of that. So what drove you to then take on all of these different leadership positions?
So I think there was a real tipping point for me between school and university, realizing that it was that feeling, that inner voice that tells you have so many things to do, you have such a potential, but you don't see people like you being able to take, positions and stuff. And a lot of times I was very quiet when I was in school, but when I came to university, what my dad told me was, you literally can become whoever you want. From day one, you can present to the world whoever you think it is. No one knows you. So show the world who you really are. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to try this. And if it doesn't work, what did I miss? So ever since that, I took every opportunity that came in. I was like, I want to show the world what I can do, but I want to be able to actually not only inspire, but make change. So how are you going to make change? By just doing the small things. You have to work up the ladder. So every position I was getting, whether it's from the startup or being elected as the president of the best union in Scotland, in Dundee, I love Dundee. It's like you have to work your way up. And the moment this opportunity comes, there's no second guesses. And what was actually very true is even when I got into positions, I always had to like go against people that were older than me, a lot of times men, by far more men as managers or as people that were in the board with me than women. And it was always like, no, I know what I'm saying is making sense. So please listen to me. And we would always have this argument back and forth. But in the end, when they realized that, they couldn't go further, because I was like, no, I'm going to show you why this is actually the way it has to be. Not because I believe that this is what either students want or what I see the results and the data show me. So, let's try that way. And if it doesn't, and if it's not successful, then okay, I'll take the blame. And most of the times it was successful. So then the second time they were like, okay, let's listen to you a bit further. So there is a lot of things around actually being a woman, wanting to be a leader, but at the same time, I think it's the point of actually being younger as well and being a woman and drive that change.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like when you're a young woman, it's a lot harder to get people to take you seriously. Like I think there's a YouTube comment on one of my videos, and it says something along the lines of like, oh, she's too young to have an opinion. I'm like, really? But yeah, that's super interesting. Like you just got to put your foot down and make yourself heard, essentially. Like
I think that sometimes you just need to realize as well where you stand, where your knowledge is, and whether you are taking this experience because you want to you want to learn from it. Every time I learn something, I always had great men and women like mentoring me and showing me the way. But a lot of times you need to be able to stand on your grounds and understand, you know what, I know what I'm talking about. There's a reason why I'm here. Every time I got a position, usually I got it because I have worked hard to be there or people voted for me to be in that position. So since people believe in me, it means I'm doing something right. So I cannot prove them wrong. I need to show, what the reason I got elected or the reason I was chosen to take this position against how many other people. So you have to give 150%. And then when people see that you give so much and you actually try, believe me, even if they have those opinions of, whether you're a woman or you're very young, then they're going to say, you know what, I actually recognize how much you work. I cannot just avoid that because the results are there in front of them. So instead of actually making that step, is about always pushing to be able to give 150%. That's why I said I always pick up and do jobs or things I like, or even the startup I have started with things I love, because this is where you can give your full potential and actually not... People won't care after a bit because they're going to realize how much your heart is into it.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously you have a lot of experience in leadership positions. So I'm curious to know, like, what did you learn about yourself in taking on all of those roles? And then what do you think actually makes a good leader?
Ooh, that's a tough but fun, actually, question. Thanks for that. So the first thing to realize when you want to lead is that you need to have a team. And one of the most important thing is actually having the right team. And sometimes even if you don't have the right team, from my perspective, is your responsibility as a leader to be able to inspire them to give their best selves. Because a leader is not someone that is just leading a team and okay, when you leave, that's it. A leader is someone that is creating future leaders. So you cannot just depend, you have your team, you have to depend on them, but they need to depend on you. You need to be able to show the example. And I think a lot of times there's a difference between managing and between leading. And there's a difference, you can see that I think in the end results as well. If the people that you're leading or you're managing, depending on which side you are willing to go ahead, provide results, go above and beyond for you, for a greater cause, for a greater goal, which a lot of times teams have, then you're probably leading more than managing. Because managing doesn't have as much the inspiration guide, but you are there. You're not trusting, but you need to be there to have a bit more control. And what makes a good leader? I don't even know in terms of like explaining it, because there's so many types of leaders, as I've learned. There are people that are charismatic naturally. There are people that are driven by numbers, but somehow still convince people to do the job. There are people that are just part of the team. So, you just want to work for them because it just feels nice to be around them and you feel they have your back. So there are so many different types. And I don't know what makes a great leader. I think I'm going to say a couple of things. First of all, listening. A lot of times when you're in a position, you completely forget that the people that are actually around you might know more things that you even know. And listening is one of my greatest advice my grandfather ever gave me is you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So that means that's the ratio you need to do. You need to listen twice and just speak once. And sometimes actually filter even when you need to speak. And the other thing I've seen worked a lot with my teams is actually giving credit. I think people a lot of times forget to give credit for other people's work. So whenever I would do anything with my team at DUSA, for example, if they would do something fantastic, even when I was asked to give the speech as president, I would always say, you know what, it was actually Jolie, Charlie, Claire, like one of my vice presidents that did all the work, and I'm not going to take the credit for them. And I think that actually makes the team believe more in you as well and what you want to give. It's the same thing we do in our startup as well. We always give credit to the person that did the job, whether that is through social media, whether that is even just internally, or even just getting a small gift for someone that did something nice. Because the most important thing people forget always, and especially in the era of social media and everyone trying, to find where they are currently, I think credit is the one thing we always forget to give. So a good leader always gives credit and never takes credit for other people's work, I would say.
Yeah, I think you touched on 2 really interesting components of leadership. And the first one is having this big vision and having a vision that you yourself believe in it. Because if you don't believe in the vision, then your team is not going to believe in the vision. And then you're not going to be able to inspire your team to do anything, right?
Exactly.
And I think just the idea of realizing that it's not about you and it is about the team, because I think a lot of people in leadership positions sometimes let their ego get too much involved, and their ego inflates to this like huge hot air balloon like size, and they like take. But in the end, like the general trend is that those kinds of teams crumble, and just positively rewarding and incentivizing your team to do better and to be geared into the mission and to like feel like, yes, I'm a part of this, like I'm a part of something bigger than myself, I think is so key and super interesting. And I was gonna ask you about like, I don't know, do you have any insights on team management? I guess you've given a few already, but how do you
So I'll give you an example that just popped in my mind. So when I was the president of DUSA, so it's the student union we've been talking about, you have a team of 7 executives and you're all member of the board, and below that you have like 350 members of staff, but you're all like very young because you just graduated and people elected you in those positions. So one thing I realized is because you have 1 year to do the job, and it can be very intensive and when you have so much work to do, you want to accomplish so many things, you've powered your team, you want to do everything. You start in June, July, and by September, everyone's crashing because they've worked so hard. It's freshest week. So I realized people forget what they do. When you work so hard, you always forget every single one of your accomplishments. So what I did one day, because we're having weekly meetings, I took a piece of paper outside my office in the wall, and I started writing every single one thing we've done from June to September. And then I made them in charge, each and every one of them, to go and write every month all the things we have achieved. In the end, we got so many things, and it's one of the things you always forget because you forget to give credit to yourself, first out of everyone. And this is where that's something that completely, when you start crashing, when you're, it is not helpful for your mental health either. So we literally, in the end, to celebrate everything we did as a goodbye, we actually did a full exhibition on all of our achievements to show what a good year looks like. Because there isn't a communication. A lot of times we forget people that are behind the scenes. We don't thank them. So literally that is one thing I did. I just started writing on walls, every single thing we have done. And I made them read it every time they were demotivated. And then they would go and say, oh my God, I did this, and I did this, And I did this. And I'm like, yes. And you did that like in a day. And other people will take them like a month. Like you put a full campaign with like 5 different departments, run the whole marketing around it, everything like that. And you didn't even realize it. And I think it happens. A lot of times people burn out. We forget to give credit, but we forget actually what we do because, you know, society moves so fast these days that people get constantly demotivated.
That is...
Instead of getting inspired by themselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that is ingenious. That is ingenious. And I think that, you know what that reminds me of? I don't know if you've read David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me, but he talks about the idea of the cookie jar. And he'd have this cookie jar where he wrote down all of these great things that he'd done or all of the great things that had happened in his life, and he'd put them in the cookie jar. And then every single time that he felt down, he felt demotivated, felt like he wasn't doing anything, he'd just like go to the cookie jar and he'd take one out and be like, oh my God, okay, I feel so much better now. Like life ain't so bad. And I think that's really smart because, you know, I've got them, like humans nowadays have the memory of a goldfish. Like, I think it's even worse. You know, if you think about social media and Instagram stories and like click this and click that. And I think now TikTok's a thing or something. And it's just like, you know, humans actually have an attention span lower than a goldfish now. I think for a goldfish, it's 9 seconds. So it's pretty crazy. But, you know, that also like, you know, I forget the stuff that I've done even in the day, like that morning. And I think especially something that women experience a lot is imposter syndrome. I see it so often, like really smart, really capable women, really intelligent, and they're like, am I good enough? And they doubt themselves, and they've been like making all of this magic happen behind the scenes. So I think that is really smart. I love that.
One point on something you touched, sorry, but it does happen, and it happens a lot of times, especially when you're like young or like when you're just starting. You'll either make mistakes or you're so driven to do things and to actually go above and beyond for your team. For example, I have quite a few examples of that. But what happens is sometimes you're going to clash with someone that is bigger, that has, you know, a bigger reputation than you, a bigger role than you, or an equivalent role than you, but they've been working, they've been working for like 40 years. And on that point, I think it's really important to realize what, you know, you do as a woman, because a lot of times you will see that when that clash happens, it's very hard to convince yourself that you're not doing the wrong thing, because a lot of times there will be this friction. And actually what I've seen is if you lead your team right and they believe in you, on that point is when your team is going to step in, because it happened to me a few times. And this is when sometimes you need other people to lift you up. That's why when you're being a good leader, a lot of times it will bring you back things when you don't even expect it.
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting point. Yeah, I really like that. Veering more onto sort of the business side of things, I'm curious to know, because you decided to go get a master's in entrepreneurship management at like one of the best schools out there, right? So I'm curious to know, how do you think an academic grounding in business is useful for when you want to go do your own thing in entrepreneurship?
Oh, so this is actually a big conversation I had with quite a few people that are entrepreneurs, other people that are not. It's always whether academia can actually help you in entrepreneurship, or whether you should just don't spend the money on the degree and just, you know, go for it and try, and you're going to learn along the way. So I think there is a debate, if you see like on social media, from Gary Vee to other big speakers as well, that will tell you that, you know, sometimes university is not something you should, you know, try. But actually what I've seen from my perspective in terms of academia, one of the things I've learned through academia is actually all the leadership skills and the soft skills that I wouldn't get from a normal job, that I wouldn't get without, you know, finding a team, or without trying to understand how I can get feedback from like my class. But at the same time, decided to go to Imperial for my entrepreneurship, because I was in that tipping point. I've spent 4 years in my degree in Scotland, done all the stuff, did 5 jobs at one time, got all my skills, got money, okay. And then I got 2 years into the student union. And then I finished the student union, and I'm like, presidency, everything, ran £6 million charity, all the stuff, got the awards. What do I do now? And I was like, I want to open my own company. But let me think back for a second. If I go straight for it, I don't know anything about IP. I don't know how to start things from scratch. Like I don't get it. And do I start in Greece? Do I start in the UK? You know, which way do I go? So literally, I went through Imperial. I checked what they do, and because the master's is very practical. So currently, I'm building on my own startup project while I'm getting credits for that. So that saves me the whole summer of trying to find a job and things. I learned how to do all the things that is lawyer oriented, that I would pay huge consulting fees to learn where to apply for funding and all this stuff in less than a year. So literally, if you make the right decision, I think that fits your vision. I think academia can actually save you years. Because right now I'm trying to close a deal to bring some technologies in Greece that don't exist yet for companies to digitize some procedures. And literally, I've been working on this for 5 months. And what my master's has given me is actually, I've been picking up things on contracts, on conversations. I've been speaking with CEOs and co-founders because I can understand straight away things based on what, Imperial taught me. So it actually, I feel I skipped like 2 years of just hitting my face in the wall. And COVID was actually very helpful in a sense because I got to work very hard on my project while being at home, while studying at the same time for exams. So it was, I feel like if you feel that academia is for you, something you enjoy as well, learning, choosing the right place for you will help you a lot. Because at the same time, I learned a lot of things I didn't know, like where I was at Imperial, and actually my business idea came through the school, through a project from the school.
Yeah.
Like my horizons, if that makes sense.
I totally agree. And I mean, just having done 1 year at the Judge Business School in Cambridge, and it's not even entrepreneurship focused, it's just management studies. I think it's almost like understanding the basics. Like, okay, how does finance work? Accounting, the economy, what is the economy all about that they keep talking about in the news? Like organizational behavior and all of these different elements that tie into what makes a business. I think it's just like, okay, why would you go through all of that trial and error and try and figure it all out by yourself when you can just go get some mentors and academic experts in the top of their field, people who've actually been entrepreneurs and consult with you as well. Like, why not just learn from them, and then you can absorb all of their knowledge and apply that to other information.
Exactly. And you know what's the thing I've learned? Like, I've learned that from the Dean, from Imperial, but it's like, people open doors when you tell them you're a student working on a project. So you get information, and it could be your project, but at the same time, you're learning things that could help me on my startup later on. But it's okay, I'm a student. I'm really here to learn, and you're really helping me. But I'm also getting insights. A lot of doors open when you say that, I'm a student. I'm working on a project, and sometimes you never know. You might get that insight on that inspiration. And I've literally, all my business ideas have come from everything I've learned from both my unis. And I did learn the ground exactly because I didn't know finances. I couldn't understand finances. And now I'm like, okay, so this is how I do all the invoices, I do everything. Because in the startup, you have an account and everything, but then at the same time, you need to double check everything to make sure you're okay. You sleep well at night. Yeah. So it did help a lot, actually, trying to understand everything. It put, exactly as you said, the layers.
Most definitely. Yeah. And it's just such an interesting point. If you're young and you're smart and you're ambitious and you can communicate to people that you have a vision and you're trying to achieve something, people relate to that and people want to help someone like that. Most definitely. But I'm curious to know, because you touched on earlier, like what you're doing in technology, and then also obviously the HR consulting startup you're doing. Do you want to tell me more about that? Just like what's exciting for you right now?
Okay, so I cannot tell you everything because I'm just finishing up on a deal. But what I can say is, so I have a startup with my mom, and I think I have an interesting hybrid model of another generation and my generation put together and what they can do. And my mom has been working in a lot of companies as HR consulting and training because she has a lot of experience within companies in retail. And she has been expanding lately. So I decided to join and try and, first of all, work on the millennial aspect. So I'm working a lot on motivating millennials, career path for millennials, but at the same time trying to find your true calling within an economic crisis, within a COVID, and what is your next steps. So I'm working on that. And at the same time, one thing I figured out, because I've been living 7 years in the UK, is there are a lot of things in Greece or in Balkans and in Cyprus, for example, in the Mediterranean in general, because we have a different culture. A lot of things, aspects around technology or around different processes haven't reached us yet. And it's very interesting trying to see the difference between, for example, UK and Greece, which is what I can say, and speaking with other friends of mine in Italy and Spain. So currently I've been working on picking up a few digitalizing processes, softwares in the SaaS aspect, if that makes sense, the industry. Right?
Yeah.
And actually trying to bring them here. And I think COVID actually is it has come in one perspective helpful, unfortunately, what is happening, but I think it's how you rise within such situations with COVID. So I'm working on bringing a few technologies over here. And that is something I'm working currently, but I cannot discuss more, but it's very exciting because, for example, imagine in Greece, we still use a lot of day-to-day operations with like pen and paper and not actually being able to do things more like see it from different perspectives. So it's quite interesting actually trying to see this transformation. And what I think is very interesting is I don't have a name in Greece. So in Scotland, if people try and find me and stuff, they're going to find all different stuff. But here I don't have, because I'm quite young, I've been away for so long, and COVID brought me back a few months faster than I was expecting. So actually in a hybrid model with my mom that already has companies, has been working with the startup and has been establishing her own clientele, with me bringing the new technology is actually something that a lot of people are telling us are doing right. So trying to combine both our knowledges to be able to expand further our company, and it actually works currently.
Yeah, that's super interesting because you're taking stuff that already exists but introducing it into a new environment. And I know exactly what you're talking about because I lived in Italy for a few months, and all of the systems, the bureaucracy, it takes so long to get anything done there. So I can kind of see where you're coming from. And it sounds really, I know in the startup world, everyone's like secret this, secret that, but it sounds really exciting, the stuff that you're working on. So that's really cool. What I am curious to know is, What I am curious to know is, obviously entrepreneurship is a journey of mistakes, and it's fail forward. That's basically what you do. If you're not willing to fail, you're not going to succeed in anything.
True.
So I'm curious to know, are there any mistakes that you've made or failures that you've had that really taught you something important about yourself or about business?
Many. In every journey. Mistake, I can tell you what I've learned. First of all, I would, for someone that is, young like us, or in our age, let's not say young, because one of the things I would say is when you're trying to do something you think is innovative, there is a lot of times someone else that has done it. So first of all, try and do not only a good Google search, but try and learn from mistakes of others so you don't get to experience the same mistakes. And at the same time, I think when, for example, I'm a very passionate person, I'm a very driven person, and sometimes someone that has experienced what I have done, has closed deals, or has, expanded their business to from 10 people as we're currently to up to 25, 100, 150, 250. When you go to that roll-up, I think you should listen a lot of times to someone that has been through your journey, rather than you expecting and going on big debates with them about why your point of view is right. Most of the times the experienced person would be right. And you would be not a fool, but you will be looking a bit naive, I think. And one thing that I have experienced a lot of times, and it's actually, I think that might be an interesting point for a debate. But when you want to do something in business, I've realized that you need to always hire, I don't know what it is, what the right word, however it fits, always the best person, even if it's the most expensive. I know it might be hard for startups, but what I've experienced is that a lot of times if you don't get the best person and you get, whatever is more convenient at that point in time, there's a lot of times you're going to bang your head in the wall because you're going to say, I should have gone for the best, for the best. And I'm not saying just only on credentials, I mean, experience, whatever that is, because a lot of times we've been going back and forth because we didn't choose the best option because we're trying to cut costs or be smarter about it. And I think I've seen from our entrepreneur journey, but also from other startups as well, and bigger companies, a lot of times when you don't choose the best solution, it's going to take you backwards even months on your job, on a project. And I think actually realizing when you're hiring, when you're signing somewhere, when you're taking someone to work for you, you need to make sure you choose the best. Because it has happened for me and for some other friends of mine that have companies, that when you don't, either the project will fail or halfway through, you're going to have to do the work for like 1 or 2 months. That is, I think, the biggest thing I've learned through this journey is you have to go with the best.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I actually totally agree. I think a lot of people are very biased towards short-term thinking and thinking, how can I cut costs in the short term? How can I make it easier in the short term? But they forget the big vision and the big picture. And often not hiring the best or not doing the best for you or your company is it's going to cause a lot of management problems if it's just not the right person, especially if they don't fit in with the team and stuff. And if they're just not the best and they're not producing quality work, it's an opportunity cost and it might rack up a lot of costs in the future.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think you've put it in the most right words. It's about not thinking short term, it's about thinking long term. And I think a lot of times when you get in that limbo of everyday life, you completely forget long term sometimes. And it can cost you money, time, projects, clients, and everything. It can cost you a lot of things. So I think you've put it in the best way. It's not thinking short term, it's thinking long term.
Yeah, most definitely. It's like the visor is like this and the visor should be like this. If you're on audio, I'm doing weird things with my hands. But anyway, yeah, I also agree about the like, when you think you're super original, and I'm always proud of the ideas that I have that I think like, oh my God, Yasmina, you're a genius. Nobody in human history has ever thought of this. But what I've learned over time is, wow, well, if I've thought of it, someone's probably already thought of it before. It's probably not that novel.
But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try it. It's about learning from their journey. It's not about not trying it because someone else has done it. Because there's so many companies as well that, started to be the first ones, the pioneers, and then someone else just came and completely Spotify is one of those stories. Mm-hmm. Just, So I'm just saying it in terms of all the people listening or watching, to ensure that, it doesn't mean because someone else has done it. It's about learning from their journey. Just be smart about it.
Yeah, and it's about always seeking the opportunity and finding that gap and seeing, okay, where is a gap that I can fill now?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm curious to move more towards you now, back to you. I'm wondering, do you have, because obviously, you do a lot of stuff, you're a high achieving person, you're running business, you're studying, you're doing all this stuff, right? Do you have any mindsets or habits or rituals that keep you on your A game?
Ooh. I don't think I've ever said that to anyone, but yes. No, I do have. Currently, actually, I'm doing Tony Robbins' comeback challenge. It's actually quite interesting because it's like a week, but it's identifying points because for some people, sometimes COVID might have put you off the game a bit because you had to be home, you had to work and stuff. So I'm doing that currently, but what I usually do is I talk to myself. So whenever the day is hard or I want to motivate myself, and not everyone is going to be always at your availability for whenever you have your highs and lows. So a lot of times I talk to myself, a lot of positive affirmations about talking to myself, and a lot of times actually when you're trying to, and I do that every morning, to be honest, in front of the mirror. And I know it might sound weird to some people, but it works for me.
Yeah.
But unless you change your mindset about who you are, no one else can change it for you. And so the first thing, that's one of the things I do. And the other things I do a lot of times is I put music on. I like to dance a lot. So I do one of those things where I go outside, I dance and sing. So in order to at least activate my creativity, to be able to be on my A game, I go out in the street, I walk, I dance, and I sing. And I know it sounds weird, but some of the times when you let your guard down, this is when your best ideas come out. So what I always do is I always have with me either my phone or a notebook to write every single idea that comes to me. And actually I've created like a list of business ideas that way. And a lot of times when you let that guard down, actually is when you realize that actually that is the first solution, that is the easiest solution. And why didn't I think of that like 2 days ago or a month ago when I had that meeting? So that is some of the things I do.
Yeah, I mean, I do the dancing thing as well. I would take dance breaks, but I do it in my room. I'm not brave enough to go out in the street and dance and sing.
Sometimes other people will smile at you and they're going to be like, that's nice. And I'm like, thank you. But I think actually putting affirmations and a lot of times actually making your goals, writing your goals, and actually you have to hype yourself up. And that's what I try to do every day. So I have a list of my goals. I have the things I do. I have my affirmations, what works for me. And I hype myself up every day. And at the point where you lose it because, reality hits you, let's be honest, you're all not always going to be happy or everything's going to go your way, especially in business and customers. You just need to have this pinpoint and realize this is just temporary. And what I need to do now is I need to step up. And if you have people around you that are going to tell you to step up, great. But not everyone is going to be there all the time because they have their own things. So you have to be able to say, now, Sofia, it's time for you to step up. That's it. That is your reality. You have to step on your ground. You got this. And this is like some pep talk to myself. Yeah. It works. Most of the times it works.
It does work. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of that really famous movie scene where you got the kid in front of the mirror and they go, you is smart, you is beautiful, you is important. But all jokes aside, that stuff actually does really work. And making sure that your brain is operating on that high frequency as opposed to this really low, I suck frequency, because that's not very motivating at all. So it's kind of you're taking what you did to motivate your team and doing that to yourself and putting your vision in front of you every day and putting your, keeping those accomplishments and that self-talk right every single day. I mean, I always talk to myself when I want genius ideas, but that's just me. That's clearly not just me. But and what that does as well, when you write stuff down or say stuff in an emotionally charged way, and a lot of people, I think they misinterpret it. They're like, I'm just going to sit on my bum and manifest things. And it's this woo-woo stuff. But when you actually, repeat stuff to yourself over and over again, your brain becomes much more in tune to that. And then you see opportunities throughout the day to either prove that to yourself or you discover things that you wouldn't have discovered before. So I find all of that really, really interesting.
No, and there's big research around it. It's not just like me, it's habits. It's just decide to do it. It's breaking your old patterns and creating that new pattern for you. And another thing I do, which is something my mom has taught me and we teach in our training as well, is actually, it's called 1%. So every day you do 1% extra for you. So whether that one day you'll do something more for you every day, 1%. And in the 100 days, you're going to be, it's 100% more than you were 100 days back. So even if it is just, going for a walk for you to calm down, whether it is brushing your teeth with your opposite hand, because that's going to mess up your brain completely. Doing things that are completely weird, but new to you, because this is how you break your comfort zones. So that's another ritual I do. 1% every day to improve yourself. Something new, something different, to be able to just build up the momentum.
Most definitely. Do you take cold showers?
Yes.
I knew it.
I started doing that in the morning. Is not easy, and I don't have it 100% yet, but it really wakes you up. And the other thing I've learned from reading quite a few things for personal development as well, is actually drinking like a proper, like big glass of water when you wake up. It wakes up your whole system in your body. And I've actually seen that makes complete difference. It wakes me up straight away. It's just drinking just one glass of water and then going for a cold shower.
Yeah. The crazy things we do to ourselves, like you say these positive affirmations and then you pour a bunch of freezing cold water on yourself. But no, I take cold showers too. You know, the worst thing is when you take them in the middle of the winter, and it's like, you know, midwinter in UK, you're like sitting there, you're standing there in the cold shower, it's freezing. But you know, like that, I found doing that myself, it, you know, it pushes you out of the comfort zone and it trains that mental toughness, so that when you're like, okay, no, Yasmina, you're going to stand here and you're not going to resist it and you're not going to die. It's going to be fine. First of all, afterwards, you feel amazing about it. It's like, I feel amazing about myself. It really boosts my self-esteem, like, wow, I did that. And that means that throughout the day, when things come up where you think like, nah, I'll just give up, or I'll just do something, nah, I won't. You push through that because you trained yourself to do that in advance. So I find that really interesting.
No, absolutely. And I think people don't realize it as well. They don't realize that if you accomplish something small in the morning, even if it's like the smallest thing, you know, make up your bed, as Mel Robbins would say, for example, it literally, you start with a different mood. I've accomplished something. I've accomplished to do that cold shower. And then it's like, I can accomplish anything within the day. Whatever comes, you have a different mindset within the day. Absolutely.
Yeah, most definitely. I'm curious to know as well, how do you manage your time?
Oh, well, what I would say for that, good time management skills, I guess. It's about prioritizing, to be honest. It's about prioritizing. So you have to prioritize within the day what you need to do. And because we have people in the office as well, so I have to ensure, depending on the day, to know what they're going to do. So I have to manage my time and also try and help them arrange, you know, because now it's summer and it's a bit different with COVID as well, what to prioritize over what project. So prioritization, first thing. Before I go to bed every day, I make a to-do list for the next day. So I take 5 minutes, 10 minutes to just write it down, what is the most important things. And the other thing on very busy times is that my social life becomes my work life. But I don't mean it in a sense of completely losing life balance, as a lot of people would start saying work-life balance and stuff. Because if you do something you really like as I do, every time I would go out, I don't see it as work. I see it as I'm enjoying myself because I'm having fun and I'm speaking with customers and I'm helping them do something better for them. So it gives me back as well, not only monetary, but it's about mentally as well, being able to enjoy what you do. So I always choose to do things that I like. A lot of times you're going to do things that you don't like, let's be honest. But it's about motivating yourself. Why are you doing this step? Why are you doing these things that you don't like? Are they gonna bring you something? So you're working hard on this project, so later on we'll bring you something. So I manage my time in terms of trying to be very consistent. And now I start to do something new. I'll tell you later on if it works or not. But I started realizing how much time is actually even like 5 and 10 minutes and the things you can accomplish with those 10 minutes. If you test yourself how procrastination is, for example, watching 2-3 hours of TV, for example, in comparison with how many things you can accomplish in 2-3 hours that you always want to do, whether that is draw, go to the gym, come back, cook something. It's the equivalent, and actually starting living and reflecting on yourself, what you could do in this time between those 2-3 hours or those 10 minutes every day. If you realize in 10 minutes today, I did like 1 set in the gym. The next day, I made this small dessert. Like you actually start reflecting on how much valuable time is, and that time doesn't come back. So I better make every moment I have memorable with the things I like or with the things that help me progress with my goals.
Yeah.
Sense as a mentality of how
some people might not be able to resonate with this. I think smart people do resonate with this. Like, I completely understand what you're saying. Like, yeah, for me personally, it's like, I have a path, I have a vision for what I want to do. I don't need balance if I'm doing what I want to be doing. Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, I'm on my path, I'm on my mission. Whenever I'm like, whenever I go and stray to like watch a Netflix show, I feel really bad about myself. I'm like, I'm wasting time. I could be doing something else. I could be playing the piano. I could be working on my business. I could be, helping a friend with something. I could be doing all the other things. And then once you're operating at that level, stuff like Netflix or social media or it just seems like, I don't know, it just seems not that appealing. And yeah,
sometimes it happens, and sometimes you just need your brain to go, whatever, you need a break. It happens, and you should feel bad in a sense. What I've started doing is that if I ever caught myself on like procrastinating in a sense in terms of TV and stuff, I was like, okay, what can I watch, since I want to watch something? What can I watch that is actually going to teach me something new? So what, instead of like watching that TV series, whatever, what if I watch, this is how the Tony Robbins challenge came to my head, because I just bumped into it in social media and stuff. And then I was like, okay, I can learn something new about controlling my emotions, about, looking this and that. And I was like, I'm going to switch that time to something I can learn more. And it actually gives you a lot of help. Sometimes, though, we do need vacations, let's be honest.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's like, you want to be learning something, okay, watch a documentary, that's fine. People who try and push themselves to the limit every day, if you want to try and work 18-hour work days, 3 days in a row, you're going to burn out for the next 2 weeks. You might as well just stay consistent. And just as long as you're consistent, slow and steady wins the race. The tortoise wins the race, not the hare. So before I ask you my last question, I'm just very curious. Has anyone ever given your surname a nickname? People have nicknames. Has anyone like nicknamed your surname? They called you like Sofia Skev or something, or like Skeffy.
So it's either Skevo, so they call me at Skevo, or actually our company is called Hatzi Filax, which is like my mom's name, because my mom is Skevofylaka. So because people cannot pronounce Skevofylaka, it's like Filax. It's like, actually a lot of people in our family in general have cut it to Filax, which actually means like guardian in ancient Greek as well.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's either Skevo, which actually means object, or Filax, which means guardian.
That's actually a way cooler answer to that question than I was expecting. I just had to ask that.
That's okay.
The last question I'm going to ask you are, what are 3 key truths about the entrepreneurial journey that you would drop on a young entrepreneur today?
It's a very bumpy road, so be prepared. Do it if you're really willing to go the whole mile. So that's number 1. Big truths, huh? Second is you've made me like start considering like, wow.
This question gets everyone. It's so funny. Don't worry, we're not expecting you to be like the oracle or the wise one in the mountain. Just whatever comes to mind.
Realize that at some point you cannot do everything alone. You cannot be bootstrapping the whole way. And that point of bootstrapping to actually either asking for help or hiring your first help or having someone as a partner is a tipping point. And it takes a lot of guts to do that point, because you always think you can do everything and you cannot. Absolutely, you cannot. So that's number 2. That is like a very big tipping point on when you become an actual entrepreneur, of not doing everything alone. I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned through this journey. Number 3 is you have to take risks. So be prepared to take risks, but be smart about it. Before you take every risk, don't go like find every single moment, every single concept, read everything, whether it's from a contract to a customer. Try and have all the details that you need for you to be able to sleep at night. Because when you make that decision, whether that is a customer or something else, you are the one that is going to be having all the burden or all the stress. So make sure that, yes, make the risk, because you're not going to grow without the risk, but make sure you tick your boxes to be able to do at least the first step, because you need to be able to sleep at night because next day you have to work again.
Yeah. So make it a calculated risk.
Exactly.
I love it.
It's whether it's calculated or actually just for you to be aware, because you never know when Brexit will happen. You never know when COVID will happen, but be aware and don't be in a sense of completely like naive, I think, in that sense. If that makes sense.
Yeah, know your numbers, understand the macroeconomic situation. I love it. So this
understand the possibilities, good and bad.
Yeah,
that's it.
I like that. So do you have anything that you want to plug to people, or where can people find you?
Oh, where people can find me. Oh, if people can spell in any sense my last name, which I know you will include, but just in case, to try. I think LinkedIn is the best place to find me. And then our company is Hatzi Filax. I'll send you also the link for LinkedIn and Facebook as well. And there are going to be quite a few things. We're going to start a few things in English soon, I think, because currently most of the things are in Greek. But anyone who would like to reach me for anything, I think as well, this is how we met in a sense. I'm here to help in whichever way, or whether our company can help anyone, especially people our age. I work a lot off social media to try and help whoever needs anything. So we do that paid, we do that unpaid.
Okay. Perfect. Well, I'll put that all in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on, Sofia. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me and for giving me access to your platform as well, to your people. Thank you.
Anytime.